Hello and welcome everyone. My name is Cooley. I am the Targeted Outreach Director for the Department of Financial Protection Innovation, also known as the DFPI. Thank you and welcome to the webinar. I want to give everyone another 2 minutes. Let's go 2 minutes to get logged in. I know it's right at noon. Some people are just getting off for lunch. So let's be patient. Another 2 minutes before we get started. Thank you. Okay, and hello and welcome everyone again. My name is Cooley. I'm the Targeted Outreach Director for the DFPI. Let's go ahead and get started. Today with me, I have Ty Mochko. He is a certified financial planner with Leslie Roper and Day and Associates, a financial planning firm based out of Folsom, California. He also serves on the board of the Financial Planning Association of Northern California and frequently teaches financial planning courses at Sacramento State University. So thank you, Landon, for joining us. Today, our webinar is about strategies for strategies for retirement planning, and we will cover some slides from CalSavers as well. Let's go ahead and jump into it. So, first, a little bit of housekeeping. The views and opinions expressed in this presentation are those of the presenters, and they do not necessarily reflect the views and position of the DFPI. This presentation is for educational and informational purposes only. This is not financial advice. This webinar is being recorded and your cameras and microphones have been turned off. But if you do have any questions, please submit it through the Zoom's Q&A feature. There's a dedicated Q&A session at the very end of the webinar, and we'll be addressing all your questions there. So comments, questions, please submit it to the Zoom Q&A feature. And also, here's a quick disclaimer about Landon, who is, again, our certified financial planner who is joining us and helping us do this presentation. So first, a little bit about the DFPI. Who are we? What is our role? The Department of Financial Protection and Innovation is California's licensing and regulatory agency of state financial institutions, products, and professionals. We conduct exams to ensure compliance, review consumer complaints, and pursue legal actions against those who are operating illegally or using unlawful, deceptive, or abusive practices. Another thing many people don't know that we do is we provide consumer awareness presentations, so things on financial literacy, financial education. We provide that throughout the state of California to help consumers from falling prey to frauds and scams and to help empower them. To learn more, please go to dfpi.ca.gov/consumers. Okay. For the next couple slides, I'm going to hand it off to Landon to talk more about defining your retirement goals and other retirement topics. Please, Landon, take away.
Thank you, Q. And thank you, everybody, for joining us today. This is clearly a topic that's near and dear to my heart as a certified financial planner professional, which I think I could confidently claim as something. If you're looking to work with a financial professional, do your homework and look for folks that have clearly met or exceeded the requirements needed, that have proper credentials and education, background, and experience to provide you with the proper advice. A solid credential to look for is the CFP marks, the Certified Financial Planner Professional. And I can provide some more information about that at the end if there's any questions regarding that. But I first want to start by talking about planning for retirement. Oftentimes when I'm talking to younger folks, defining retirement or thinking about retirement seems way off in the future, and it's not something that they often think too much about. But as people get older, they get more established in their careers, the idea of retiring eventually or stopping work becomes a little bit more pressing the older we get. And so part of this is, what do we define as retirement? I loosely define retirement as when work becomes optional. That is, that you have accumulated the resources and income in order to sustain your preferred lifestyle with the resources that you have. And that's when working sort of becomes, rather than mandatory to maintain your lifestyle, it becomes more optional. There's certainly a lot of benefits of continuing to remain active and even employed in and through at least the early retirement years. But that's something that a lot of people focus on, is trying to get to that point where they no longer have to work anymore, that they can do so by choice. So a couple of things that we want to talk about as Q. Hopefully you can sort of advance the slides. So some choices that we're going to be talking about. So one, where are you going to live and how much it will cost? Certainly living in California tends to be a little bit more expensive than other parts of the country. That is certainly something that is on people's minds today. What types of activities do you want to engage in? Are you planning on traveling? Do you have an active lifestyle? Do you like to entertain? Or do you tend to be more, keep to yourself and don't spend a whole lot? So that's a personal discussion point. Factors to consider in terms of how are you going to fund your retirement. Retirement income streams such as pensions, Social Security, or other income sources such as royalties or other types of fixed payments. Those are factors to consider. How you want to utilize your resources, whether that's whether you want to spend it yourself, if you want to make gifts or contributions to friends or family, charitable donations or otherwise. Healthcare and long-term care. I missed one here. It's local and state and federal tax obligations. So regardless of your age or stage of life, taxes are a fact of life. And so factoring in what your tax profile is going to look like both before retirement as well as after retirement is an important thing. And we tend to focus as planners in trying to minimize tax obligations over your lifespan, not necessarily in any given year. Nobody likes paying taxes. But certainly if it's a matter of paying less taxes over the course of your life, rather than getting stuck with high tax bills later in life, those are planning things that you want to consider. Healthcare and long-term care. Healthcare gets much more expensive in retirement. It's often said that a person's last year of life tends to be their most expensive in their life, and that's primarily due to high healthcare costs. So long-term care is what people often think about as nursing homes or skilled nursing. That comes into play when you are no longer able to care for yourself, and that is even more expensive. Those are expenses on top of traditional healthcare. So you can think about healthcare in terms of going to your doctor, having surgeries, getting medications and prescriptions. Long-term care kicks in when you need somebody, either an assistant or even considering a nurse or medical professionals to come in and provide ongoing regular care for you, and that becomes quite expensive. And so that's a factor to consider. Burial, memorial, and estate planning are all factors that you need to think about towards end of life. So what and where do you want to have your remains? What do you want to have done with your remains? How do you want to think about your memorial, and what is left to your family, friends, and loved ones, as well as any charities that you want to leave for. So that's all involved in estate planning. So these are all different factors that you want to consider as you're defining your retirement goals. And I will say that these factors do change over your lifetime, where you may have certain goals that you might be thinking about when you're younger. Those tend to evolve once you have become established in a career, start having children or family or otherwise, or you just get older. So things definitely change over your life. Okay, so let's talk about strategies, some high-level strategies for achieving your financial goals. Okay, financial planning is an ongoing process, but the earlier that you start in identifying your plans, the earlier you can start making progress towards those. So it's oftentimes hard for young people to sort of envision what retirement actually looks like, because you're more focused on just getting a job, getting established in your career, and just kind of figuring out what life looks like. But the earlier that you start saving and investing and planning for those goals later on in life, the easier it will be and the cheaper it will be over your lifetime. And we'll see an example in a few slides. Okay, we already talked about setting those retirement goals as well as other goals, right? There's education goals, there's goals for purchasing a house or buying a car or starting a family. Those are other types of goals that you might want to also consider. Creating and maintaining a budget. It's important to know how much you need to plan for. And I usually say it's hard to think about how much you will need in future dollars, and 20 or 30 years down the road, how much you will need. So just think about it in terms of today. How much do you spend? What is your rent? What is your food and grocery budget? What are your utility costs, right? What does it cost for you in your current lifestyle to support that particular lifestyle? And take that out and think about, all right, this is my lifestyle now. What do I want it to look like in the future? And that helps create a framework for starting this financial planning process. And say, once you have that, then you can start calculating what your financial retirement needs are. Okay, what is the current budget translate into a future retirement need? So a good example is if you go from your working years into retirement, some of those expenses that you would have to incur for working don't no longer exist. So for example, gas to commute. Oftentimes people's fuel budget declines, or clothes that you need to purchase for your occupation, or other work-related expenses. Those things tend to disappear, and they get offset by other expenses such as travel, such as maybe entertaining or things that you planned on doing in retirement. So those are the things you have to consider. It's important for you to do your research, okay, on the best retirement options for you. And we'll talk about different resources, different types of investment vehicles, different types of investment options. So do the research, get some input from other professionals. Oftentimes people start with their friends and family that have been successful in this area. Start with them, utilize the network that you have, but do your research. Don't just take a single person's word for it, especially if they have any sort of profit motive or sales motive. Make sure that you shop around and get a little bit of information before you make significant life-changing decisions, okay? Take advantage of employer-sponsored retirement accounts. So if you work for an employer that provides an employer plan such as a 401k or a 403b or a simple or a SEP IRA or anything like that, try to take advantage of it for two reasons. One, it makes it easy for that savings amount to come straight out of your paycheck, so you don't see it. Once it's out of sight, out of mind, and you're able to build that savings bucket up more easily than if it might need to come directly out of your paycheck. Out of your checking account. Once it's in your checking account and you see that those dollars able to spend, it tends to be a little bit more difficult to convince yourself to turn that into savings. So use psychology and put it out of sight, out of mind. The other thing about employer-sponsored plans is they also oftentimes provide some amount of a match or an incentive for you to utilize them. So check with your employer and see what they offer. And oftentimes you have to get that set up at specific periods in the year. Maybe that might be around open enrollment. So if there's an open enrollment period, ask your HR department, HR rep, to provide you some information about that. Once you have looked into the employer-sponsored retirement accounts, if those aren't available, then you can also look at additional retirement accounts, such as traditional IRAs or Roth IRAs, or even opening a savings account or a CD. Those are also good alternative retirement savings options. Okay. Consider having additional income sources. I know we're now in the era of the gig economy, and so it's not unusual for me to see people that if they have the time and the extra capacity and they want to make a little bit extra money, they might go do something like driving for Uber or Lyft or those types of things. I wouldn't necessarily say that those are primary things, unless that is what you choose to do for a living. And there's certainly ample benefits in terms of time and flexibility. So consider having additional income sources, especially if you're shooting for targeting a specific retirement income, or you need to catch up on your savings plan in order to get yourself into a specific place for achieving those retirement goals. Delay Social Security benefits. This is a whole area that I could spend a lot of time on. What I will say is the longer that you delay taking Social Security, the higher the overall benefit that you will get up until age 70, right? Right now, Social Security does not increase past age 70. If you want to learn more about the pros and cons of taking your Social Security early versus later, that would be probably a separate topic that we could present on its own. But I would consider reaching out to the Social Security Administration and seeing what your benefits are, and then consulting a financial professional to provide some information about the benefits of pros and cons of that. Certainly pay off your debts, especially if you have lots of consumer debt, such as credit cards, home equity lines of credit, or other types of things. The debt discussion is one that we could also spend a lot of time on. Generally, I will leave the debt discussion to there's good debt and there's bad debt. Okay, and I know various folks have different philosophies on that, but generally speaking, I would say that good debt are things where you take on debt to invest in appreciating assets, things that are going to grow in value. Bad debt would be things that you're going to spend money on, things that depreciate or have no value once you've spent them. So, for example, buying cars or other types of toys on credit, those would be generally characterized as bad debt. Taking on a mortgage to buy a house or other types of investment property could be potentially considered good, smart uses of debt. So, and then lastly, on this slide, protect yourself from fraud and scams. We are in an unprecedented era where there is, so many attacks on us individually for our data that is then used to hack our identities and take advantage of us and potentially steal money. So do yourself a favor, protect yourself, be skeptical about emails that you receive. Make sure that you know the links that you're clicking on. And if you ever have a doubt, don't do it. Okay. If it looks suspicious, it probably is. Make sure that you protect yourself. All right. So, okay. A couple of different retirement investment options, things that maybe I might want to clarify that not everybody knows the difference of. Okay. Most people are familiar with the idea of a pension plan. That is, you work for a company, or maybe it might be the government for a number of years. And once you reach a certain age or have put in a number of years, you then become eligible for a pension. That is a guaranteed monthly or sometimes quarterly or annually payment. Pensions have, by and large, declined in the US, but there's still lots of organizations that do offer pension plans. Oftentimes they're more associated with the government, whether that's state employees, teachers. Oftentimes unions have pension plans, but not all employers do. A lot of private employers have moved to the 401k plan, okay, or 403b. These are very similar plans. Generally speaking, 403bs tend to be offered by nonprofits or government agencies or otherwise hospitals, but they operate very similarly. These are vehicles where you put money in, you defer it out of your paycheck, so the money comes straight out of your paycheck into these plans, and there's some various benefits that occur when you make those contributions. So we've got traditional individual retirement accounts, okay, or a traditional IRA. These allow you to make pre-tax contributions that allow the funds to grow tax deferred, okay. And so we'll talk a little bit more about that, but that these would be good tax advantaged accounts that allow your funds, the money that goes into these accounts, to be able to grow without being taxed until some future date when you are ready to take those distributions, usually in retirement. And then conversely, we've also got the Roth IRA. And so this is sort of the inverse of the traditional IRA. The money is contributed into these accounts with after-tax money. So you're not getting any tax deduction for the contribution, but the money that goes into these accounts grows tax-free, assuming that you meet certain requirements. So those requirements tend to be, you have to be age 59 and a half or older. And for a Roth IRA, you have to have had the account open for 5 years or more. Okay, and I can address some questions upon that once we get to the question session. Okay, so I want to give you a little bit of an example of the power of compound interests. So this is my Lori and Peter example. We have two friends, Lori and Peter. We're going to start with Peter. All right, Peter starts saving $5,000 each year on his birthday, starting when he's age 35, all the way through when he turns 65. Okay, so he invests $5,000 per year for 30 years. So that's 30 payments. All right, and that adds up to, over the course of that 30-year period, he would have invested a total of $150,000. Okay. And so if we're just going to assume that he earns 8% rate of return, a flat 8% over that 30-year period. His friend Lori, she begins saving the same amount, the $5,000, on her birthday at age 25. She saves $5,000 each year from 25 through 34, so also totaled 10 payments. So Peter saves for 30 payments. Lori saves only 10 payments. So $5,000 times 10 years equals $50,000. We're also going to assume that she earned an 8% rate of return. Surprisingly, even though Lori saved for a third of the time, she actually has a larger balance at age 65 than we look at Peter, who saved for 3 times the amount. And if we go to the next slide, it shows the difference in the calculation. Okay, so the green bar reflects the amount that the total amount that they saved over the period of time that they saved. So Lori, she saved for 10 years and then stopped saving. Okay, started at age 25, ended at age 34 or 35. Peter started at 35, continued saving for 30 years until he got to age 65 and then retired. So they both retired at 65. Surprisingly, Lori still has amassed more money, even though she stopped and let it grow, than Peter, who started 10 years too late, but didn't. So that this illustrates the power of compound interest. Okay, and this again is the reason why it is so important for you to start as early as possible. It just the amount of time is the biggest factor that allows your money to grow. Now, granted, this scenario assumes a flat rate of return, and we all know that the stock market doesn't necessarily grow in a straight line. So there's lots of different other examples. But if we were able to just have Lori find a savings account that paid 8%, both Lori and Peter find a savings account that paid 8% and let it sit and grow for that period of time, this is what it would translate into. Okay, so in my opinion, it's not the amount that you save. Okay, it's getting started doing so. Okay, so I always encourage people that no matter what your financial situation, and I understand situations that there is not a nickel to spare in the budget, or at least it doesn't feel like it. Okay, but I will say, for every day that you delay, you're giving up the benefit of this powerful thing that we call compound interest. So if you can carve out $5 or $15 or whatever your budget accommodates, see if you can start putting some money away to take advantage of this tool. Okay, all right. So then the next slide, I'm going to provide some rough guidelines for you. And this will, you can kind of find where you lie personally on this chart, and it'll give you an idea. What this says is the required amount of savings based upon the rate of return that you could potentially get. Okay, so I'm just going to utilize the highlighted sections in yellow as an example, and then you can utilize this tool to hopefully answer your own question about where you sit. Okay, so in this example, utilizing this table, a person who is 30 years old and planning to retire at age 60, 30 years from now. Okay, so the numbers across the top are the number of years until retirement. So my example, I've got a 30-year-old and they're planning to retire at 60, which means they have 30 years until retirement. If they invested earning an annual rate of return of 10% per year, they need to save approximately 15% of their earnings each year in order to, when they retire, have an amount of money sufficient to replace the income that they have. Okay, so you can see as the number of years until retirement declines, even with higher rates of return, the numbers almost become unmanageable. Meaning, if I looked at the if I've got 15 years to retirement, but I'm only earning, 5 or 6%, that's suggesting that I have to save approximately 80% of my income into retirement. And that's obviously generally not feasible for most people. Okay. So the higher the rate of return and the longer the years of retirement, the less somebody would otherwise have to save to make the same amount of money in retirement. Okay. And I can certainly address questions at the end if we want to come back to this slide. The next slide is also a good benchmark for people at various ages. Okay. So I've got two examples on this slide. All right, yellow and orange. Okay, so the yellow is my 30-year-old person. Okay, so what this slide says is this is the amount of assets that you should have at various ages, again, in order to maintain that same level of income. So the yellow example is a person 30 years old making $50,000 per year should have saved an investment assets of between $30,000 and $40,000. Okay, so if we multiply 0.6 times 50,000, that gives me 30,000, and 0.8 times 50,000 is 40. So this is providing a range of assets that says somewhere between that person at 30 years old at that income should have saved approximately 30 to 40,000. The other example, the orange example, is this is a person who is 55 years old, all right, making, let's say, $100,000 per year. They should have saved investment assets of $800,000 to $1 million. So that is the 8 times 100 equals 800,000, or the 10 times 100,000 equals $1 million. Okay. Now, I'm going to say you need to take this with a grain of salt. Okay, and if you don't fit or fall within those recommendations, it's not the end of the world. Okay, every family's situation is a little bit different. Okay, this is basically a rough guideline. There's also a couple of different factors to fall in here. This doesn't take into account income sources such as Social Security or pensions, right? Income sources that would otherwise reduce the amount of investment assets needed. Okay, so it's a bit of a kind of a high level gauge. So I wouldn't say that, if you're 55 and you don't have $1 million, I would not, don't freak out. But it does say that if you haven't started accumulating anything, you're behind the curve, and you need to start getting yourself caught up and putting a plan in place to start to do that. Okay. So I'll leave it at that. I will I'll move to the next slide, just kind of summarizing the current tax benefits of retirement savings. So in this year, 2023, we have contribution limits for traditional IRAs and Roth IRAs of $6,500. That's for everybody under 50. And then once you reach age 50, there's an additional $1,000 catch up for those 50 and older. So if you're 50 and older, your total amount that you can contribute for the year would be $7,500. Okay. Again, traditional IRAs, you make contributions that are tax deductible. Okay. So it reduces your taxable income. But then when you take the money out, when you take distributions, it becomes taxable. Now, keep in mind, if you take distributions before age 59 and a half, that do not count for one of the many exclusions, then you're not only going to pay income tax on the distribution, but you're also going to be subject to a 10% penalty. That's their way of incentivizing you to try to keep the money in the account for retirement. Roth IRAs, on the other hand, when you make contributions, those contributions are not tax deductible. They do not reduce your taxable income. But when you take distributions down the road in retirement, Hopefully after 59 and a half, those distributions are tax-free. And we always like tax-free assets, okay? Conversely, retirement plans such as a 401k or 403b, your contribution limits for 2023 are $22,500, and then with an extra $6,500 catch up for those 50 and older. So $30,000 total for those that are 50 and older. That allows you to kind of make up that difference if you've been behind a little bit behind the curve in your savings plan. Okay. Now, most contributions to these types of plans are pre-tax. It's similar to the traditional method. They also often include employer contributions. So if you have the ability to get an employer match or some other type of employer contribution, I always strongly suggest that you at least put the amount in required to get that employer match, because that's essentially free money. Okay, they're giving you an incentive, financial incentives to participate. Take advantage of free money. Okay. Many of these plans also now have Roth options. So rather than having that 401k contribution go in and as pre-tax, you can also instead contribute it as Roth, which allows it to grow tax-free. And I often get the question, and this next line will kind of answer that. I often get the question, well, which one should I do? Should I do pre-tax or Roth? And the general rule of thumb is the higher the current tax bracket that you are in, the higher that you should steer towards traditional contributions. Okay. So if you are in the 35% tax bracket, generally speaking, I suggest that the max benefit, you're going to receive the most benefit from putting your money into the traditional tax deferred side. Okay. The lower the tax bracket that you're in, if you're in the 10% bracket or the 12% bracket, then you're going to probably benefit more from putting your contributions into the Roth side. Okay. That's not exclusive. That's not 100% true for every situation. Everybody's different, but that's a general rule of thumb. Okay. So that's all I have for my section. I will pass it back to Q to continue the presentation.
Thanks, Landon. Fantastic information, and he will be available for a Q&A session at the very end. Again, a reminder, if you do have any questions, please submit it into the Zoom's Q&A feature. We will be answering those at the end of the webinar. Continuing on, CalSavers. So CalSavers is California's retirement savings program. Who is it for? So for employees, those are employed in the state of California. You have to be 18 or older. You also have to have a social security number or an ITIN, which is an individual tax identification number. Some of the features include the ability to have standard investment or contribution settings or customize it. You could also, the account stays with you even though you change jobs. So you'll have your savings account, the investment account with you. It also has a low administration fee. And for employers, CalSavers is for those who do not offer employee-sponsored retirement program. It's also for employers that have one or more employees. And the features include things like it's very easy to facilitate, to register and use. There's no fees for employers, so it doesn't cost you anything as a business. And then, of course, employers are not fiduciaries, or basically they don't really maintain the program. The CalSavers is who maintains the retirement program. A couple different disclaimers. CalSavers is not intended to replace or compete with employer-sponsored retirement programs, and registration requirements do apply. If you do want to learn more, the website for CalSavers is www.calsavers.com. On the next slide, it just talks about all the different resources and client services available. I would say if you're considering CalSavers, if you don't have a retirement program through your employer, or maybe you're self-employed, you can go to calsavers.com. There's a lot more information there. They're also very responsive if you ever call them or email them. to get more information. I highly recommend you do it if you're considering starting a retirement account on your own, or if it applies to you. Okay. I know we're short on time, so I'm trying to wrap this up quickly. So important. This is one of the most requested topics for the DFPI, which is protecting yourself from fraud and scams. Scammers often target retirees due to their savings and vulnerability. Here are some quick tips to protecting yourself. First of all, you always want to stay informed about different scams and fraud tactics. My team, we host webinars and workshops and in-person presentations across California about frauds and scams. So please subscribe to our newsletter to learn more about those events. You always want to be cautious when receiving unsolicited calls, emails, or messages. Don't share any personal or financial information. Also, don't click on any links or call back any of those numbers they might give you. Instead, go directly to your financial institution or family members or whoever that you think had called you. You always want to do your own research and avoid high pressure sales. You also want to be aware of anybody who's offering you guaranteed returns. That's a huge red flag for a scam. Also, you want to check credentials. You want to verify credentials of financial advisors, brokers, investment professionals. You can actually go to the DFPI's website, dfpi.ca.gov /verify to check their credentials. You also want to use strong passwords and secure your mobile devices or computer devices. Also, you want to check your financial statements regularly. Report any suspicious activities to your financial institutions or credit card companies. If you see anything that you didn't make a transaction on, definitely want to catch those immediately and report them. Shred documents for sure. Personal information and financial information should always use a cross-cut shredder, not just a strip shredder, but one that just shreds everything. This is a big one happening right now. Scammers often use fake charities to steal money. So there are many ways to check the legitimacy of a charity, especially with things like wildfires going on. So you definitely want to check that. Also, you want to seek professional advice if you're unsure about making a financial decision. So individuals like Landon, who is a certified financial planner, can help you. And of course, you want to always report any suspicious activity. If you believe you're being targeted by a scammer, maybe fell victim to a scam or fraud, please report it to the DFPI. There's a link right there, dfpi.ca.gov /file-a-complaint. You can also file one with the FTC. I always recommend just filing them both. So the FTC, the Federal Trade Commission, federal agency, they track these types of scams and frauds. The DFPI is obviously a state agency. We track these as well. If you report them in both places, we can keep track of them and do our best to help you out. Okay, Q&A. Let's quickly go through these questions. Let's see here. Oh yeah, we did get a lot of good questions. All right, first question. Does my Social Security income get taxed?
There's a question mark. It's that it may or may not be taxed depending upon your other income sources. If your sole source of income is exclusively your Social Security, generally speaking, your Social Security it will not be taxed at both the federal and state level. If you have other sources of income, such as pensions, you take distributions from your 401k or other types of retirement accounts, then there is a formula that then gets applied to determine how much of your Social Security might be considered taxable.
Great, thanks, Landon. Next question. Would 1 million be enough to retire on? What is a good amount I should shoot for? And I think you had a slide on this, but
yeah, that slide that one slide does provide. So the question is not so much is 1 million enough to retire on. It is would the 1 million be sufficient to support whatever the living expenses, your retirement lifestyle that you want to support. There's a general rule of thumb. Many people are familiar with the 4% rule. I use it as a rule of thumb. It's not an exclusive, but if you use 4% of whatever your saved balance is, so $1 million times 4% would be $40,000. It would be considered a safe, reasonably safe withdrawal rate in retirement for that amount of money. So if your lifestyle can be supported on $40,000 per year, then $1 million would be enough. If it can't, then you would have to save some more.
Thank you, Landon. Okay, next question. Do I still have to file my taxes after I retire? I don't plan on earning income through part-time work or another W-2 job.
The answer to that is possibly. It sort of depends on if you have taxable income, or sometimes you don't necessarily have to file a tax return. Sometimes there's situations where you still want to file a tax return in the event that you might be eligible for refundable credits. So if the government owes you money, you may still want to file a tax return. But if you don't have any taxable income that would subject you to a tax return, for example, if your taxable income is below, say, for example, the standard deduction, you may not have to file a tax return, but I would suggest consulting with a tax professional to get a solid answer to that question for you.
Great, thank you, Landon. Okay, at what age do you recommend a person should retire at for Social Security benefit purposes?
So the answer to this question is a big depends. And this is probably one of the biggest question marks that most people have when they're planning for the retirement. I will generally say that the longer that you delay taking Social Security, the better overall. If you expect to have a long life, then generally delaying your Social Security tends to work out better from a numbers perspective. Okay. Situations that might change that is if you have health conditions that would lead you to potentially have a lower than a normal life expectancy. The rough break-even point between taking Social Security early versus delaying and taking it is typically when somebody is in their mid 80s. If they expect to live, past their early to mid 80s and well into their 90s, it's generally better to consider delaying Social Security as much as possible. If you have health issues, you have heart issues, you might have been diagnosed with cancer, and your life expectancy is maybe considered less, well, then maybe you want to consider taking it early. But it also comes down to what is that living expense amount? And if you take it early, are you going to be able to live comfortably on that lower amount? Because it is a permanent thing. Once you elect to take it early, there's without other than a few exceptions, there's no going back on that decision.
Thanks, Len. Quick follow-up here, and this is just me asking for a friend. When you retire, you don't have to withdraw your Social Security benefits immediately. You could actually wait if you have maybe other financial income. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's correct. Meaning, so if say, for example, you retired and you had a lot of money in savings, or maybe you got a severance or some sort of a retirement package, you could wait and just live off of that savings or those other sources of income, letting your Social Security grow for a few years, and then decide to take it. Oftentimes, the magic age is what's called your full retirement age, and for most people under their their early 60s now, that age is now basically 67 is considered your Social Security full retirement age, and that's the age at which you don't have to factor in your other income. You can take your Social Security without any other penalties, shall we say.
Perfect. Thank you so much. Okay. Next question. Can I have both a traditional and Roth IRA account?
Yes, and I encourage it. Now that 65 or the $6,500 annual limit applies to a combination of the two. So you can pick and choose which one you want to contribute to on a given year, or kind of split the contributions up to a maximum of the 6,500. But you absolutely can have both a traditional and a Roth IRA at the same time.
Cool, very cool. Thanks, Landon. Next question. Who should I talk to about estate planning?
Great question, and I'm really glad that you're thinking about estate planning. It's one of the things that's probably lower on the priority list of most folks when it comes to estate. I always encourage folks. Technically, everybody should have an estate plan once they graduate high school. Once you become once you become an adult, everybody should have an estate plan, which generally, to answer your question, attorneys typically draft estate plans because those are legal documents. There are sources that you can go to that wouldn't be considered law, that might have some templates. Maybe you can get those from the library and online. I always encourage folks to consider consulting an attorney when you're making these decisions, because generally speaking, the price for putting a proper plan in place will more than pay itself in dividends of making sure that your property, when you pass, gets to who you want it to in the most expedient manner that you can, i.e., bypassing probate and the other complications that come with a poorly designed estate plan.
Yeah, really good answer. Thank you, Landon. Okay, next question. Are these percentages based on before or after tax income?
Generally before tax. So think about it in terms of gross income before tax.
Great, thank you. Next question. What are the major differences for a Roth if trying to choose between a 401k or 457 plan?
I'm a little confused by the question. The major differences. So if you're going to utilize the Roth element when you're having your paycheck, so a 457 plan is considered a tax deferral plan. I'm sorry, an income deferral plan, and not necessarily a qualified retirement plan. So generally tend to speak more about 401k versus 403b. But so when you're talking about making deferrals, a traditional deferral, the money is going to come out of your paycheck. Say, for example, you make $100,000 of salary and you decide to defer $20,000 into the 401k. When you get your W-2 that shows what your taxable income, your W-2 taxable income is going to show $80,000, even though your salary is $100,000. So the $20,000 that you deferred into the 401k is reducing your taxable income. If instead you decided to take that $20,000 and put it into the Roth component, not the traditional component, okay, you're still putting that $20,000 into the 401k with your employer. It's just not reducing your taxable income. So your W-2 is going to show the full $100,000 when you go to do your taxes. Hopefully that answered the question.
Thank you. Okay, next question. I'm currently investing in a 457B. Is it possible to withdraw the funds early to purchase a primary home or investment home without paying taxes or fees? Might be a tax question.
That is a good question on a 457. I don't really have the answer. I will say on a 401k, and I believe that the 457 rules are going to match this. The maximum that you can withdraw from a 401k or other types of retirement accounts is up to $10,000 for the purchase of a primary residence. Okay, so if you can show the purchase of a primary residence in the same year that you took the distribution, you will be exempted from the 10% penalty, but it will still be counted as taxable income for you. Okay, so the answer sort of is yes and. I don't necessarily recommend it, but I know a lot of people do this is if your employer does allow you to borrow from your 401k, there's also a provision sometimes in 401k plans that allows you to borrow up to the maximum statutory amount is $50,000. And it allows you to borrow that money for the purchase of a primary residence. But when you do that, you then subject yourself to a repayment plan through your employer where they're deducting those payments directly from your paycheck every pay cycle.
And I do want to add that that also affects your debt to income ratio. I know we had another web about buying homes, and if you do withdraw from your 401k to try to get it down.
It does. The lenders are going to look at that because they're going to look at that exactly as another debt payment that you're making.
Yep, debt obligation. And the last thing I want to say about 457Bs is there are, whoever is administering your 457B plan, and I'm guessing this is with the state, there are people that you could call and talk to them. And because every 457 program is different. They're not like standard.
That's right.
401k plans are also very different. So across all different employers, these retirement programs are different. What I always recommend is go to your human resources person, and they can give you the contact individual to talk to get more information about your 401k, your 403Bs, your 457B program, because you're putting money in there. You really should know a lot more about what are your options and what are your benefits and all that. And yes.
Right. The other thing too is if you really want to get into the weeds, I would go ask your HR person that's responsible for the employer plan, the 401k or otherwise, say, hey, I'd like to see what's called the summary plan description. That's the rule book of the retirement plan that your employer has, that has all of those rules and regulations about what you can and cannot do.
Awesome. Thank you, Landon. Okay, last question here. I recently found out that stay-at-home spouses qualify for spouse SSI. Is that true? Can you elaborate?
Certainly. This is actually one of the probably the lesser known aspects of Social Security. So if you have a dual income household, and I'm just going to say rough example, let's just say one spouse's Social Security benefit is estimated to be $3,000 per month when they retire, when they start drawing their Social Security. But the other spouse did not work, okay, for whatever reason. There is a provision in the Social Security Code that allows for the non-working spouse to be eligible for spousal benefits, which is always typically calculated at 50% of the working spouse's benefit. So if the non-working spouse did not have any work history, for whatever reason, stayed at home, raised the family, etc., and they did not have a work history that gave them Social Security benefits, when they go to file for Social Security, when the working spouse goes to file, the non-working spouse can file for spousal benefits. And in this example, the working spouse would get $3,000 per month. The non-working spouse would get $1,500 per month. Okay, so for a total of $4,500. Okay, and when you go to file, they're always going to look at your work history to see whether or not which one is the higher of the two. Is the benefit based upon your work history higher, or are you eligible for a spousal benefit that's higher? The other question that I get about this, and this is the 10-year rule. If you were married to somebody for 10 years or more and then got divorced, once you pass age 60, then you are potentially eligible for a benefit based upon that previous spouse's benefit. Okay, mainly it's a widow benefit, but the caveat is you have to have been married for 10 years or more and after age 60. So if you're later in years and you're still looking at remarrying, make sure that you look at that provision or call the Social Security Administration to get more details about that.
Okay, great. Thank you, Landon. All right, it's almost 1 o'clock. I just do some last minute housekeeping. So some reminders, please subscribe to the DFPI's monthly newsletter. We publish events, webinars, consumer alerts, a lot of really great information in there. You could go to dfpi.ca.gov/subscribe to get on our newsletter. We also have a YouTube channel. Again, this webinar is being recorded and we will publish it onto our YouTube channel. So you can rewatch it if you want to. So go to our YouTube channel, subscribe to it, and we need your feedback. There's a link right there where you could just click on. I'm going to send out the slides after this webinar. So you can go to that link right now or go click on the link with the slides later on. We need your feedback to find out how we can do better, right? Did we go through the slides too fast? Is the slides too long? We need to know how we can do better on our next presentations. And finally, our next webinar is September 27th at noon. That's also a Wednesday. You could register for it. It is on protecting yourself from fraud. I'll bring on some of my staff members and we're going to do a little more in-depth webinar, just talking about all the different fraud out there and then tips on how to protect yourself. With that, I want to say thank you for joining, and also big special thank you to Landon, who is a certified financial planner with Leslie Roper Day and Associates. He's fantastic, a lot of great information. And if you ever do need information or help, I do highly recommend talking to a certified financial planner to get that kind of assistance. Landon, thank you. And thank you, everyone. Please take care of yourselves and each other.